Hello, sir. How are you doing?
Hey, welcome to Maine.
Oh my goodness. It's wonderful to be here.
Come on in.
It took me all day to get here, but finally we're here.
Hopefully it's worth it.
Wow.
Anyway, it's just really great that you've taken the time to come up and visit. And
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So here we are. This is where I work.
Wow.
This is where I do the actual, making of prototypes and things like that.
Wow.
So, I have basic equipment. Mostly it's my computer. Today everything is a computer.
But I still see the machine.
Here's a bandsaw, sanding equipment, drill press, other sanders.
Wow.
And here's my pride and joy right here. This is one right here. This is my little milling machine.
Wow.
So this is a kind of a junior milling machine, but it's perfect for me because I only do small things, but I can cut metal, wood, plastic with really great precision. So I can do a lot of work that we wouldn't be able to do otherwise, mostly because of this machine. So other than that, it's pretty much woodworking equipment. This is kind of a metalworking tool, but you can also work with wood and plastic, and also a little lathe. That's important. So all of this is very light-duty equipment. This isn't production equipment, but it enables me to work out ideas, and to actually create original models. And
that is really amazing. I mean, just to play the finished product. I mean, it's just amazing now to see where everything is coming from, and
well, the thing is
really
too
amazing.
That I love making musical instruments because I can make something that is just pieces of wood and plastic and metal, and they're just really pieces of wood, plastic, and metal. But then when a musician takes control and uses that as a tool, then it becomes magical. But of course, it isn't really magical. It's just wood, plastic, metal put together in a way to try to make it serve as a tool for musicians. And so that's what I really enjoy doing.
Amazing.
And this is where I do it.
That's amazing. I mean, like for me, this is like the first time I see what the instrument made and everything, because I just get it and play, but to have an understanding and see how you put together, it's really amazing. And it's such an honor for me to come here and see all of this.
Well, the honor is all mine.
And I love the basses very much. I mean, these instruments, they sound unbelievable, and I'm so grateful and honored.
Well, we feel the same, and so what we're going to do while we're here is take a look at some of the things. This instrument here is kind of interesting because this is a guitar, and what you talk about making the instruments, but this guitar was created almost entirely on the computer. That is to say that the design was made on the computer.
Wow.
Actually, I take that back a little. Let me grab something down here because this. The way this is created in this case is that this drawing was made on the computer that was glued down to this piece of wood. Okay, and this is just a piece of cheap pine. It's just and you can even see here. This is some plastic putty or whatever that I added to it so that I could play with the shapes in this model, which is never intended to be actually used as a musical instrument, but only as a way to develop the ideas. So the initial idea was in the computer. You can see it there. And then I reworked it by hand, and I made a neck for this too, which you don't see here just to test out the ideas. And then once I was satisfied that I had the form that I wanted, then the original drawing that I put into the computer, and also was combined with it. You see these squares here in the back?
Yeah.
This is where it was all digitized.
Wow.
So this guitar here, actually, because I've been around for a while, and I definitely predate the computer, the use of computers for machining and so on. But this was made entirely on a computer in the end. I never. It was like, when I was a kid, I was into model airplanes. You balsa wood, you could, and it was control line or gliders or other kind of thing. So you buy the kit at the store and put it together. So I provided all the data points for this instrument, and I sent it out to the guy who has the computer-controlled machining center. It came back like parts in a model airplane kit. So all I had to do was screw it together. Wow. I never. That was the first time I've done that. That was maybe 6 or 8 years ago. Of course, people are been doing that in advance of my getting to that point. But times have changed a lot, and computers are a very, very big part of all that we do these days in design and fabrication.
Wow.
So this was just really the very first one, too. In the past, I've made the initial model by hand completely, and then it was computerized. But now, just starting right out with the computer. So it's times are changing, and the results are very, very, although computers are impersonal and they don't have the craft values or whatever, but boy, do they ever do a good job. That's the thing.
I tell you, a great job. But now tell me about these holes. I mean,
these holes here, okay.
Yeah, because it really looks cool. It looks like I can just play it like that.
It plays fine like this, but this is the first prototype of our NS guitar, and it has a maple body. The reason it has a maple body is in order to take advantage of the kind of intensity of the energy in maple is very strong, as opposed to lighter weight woods, which don't have quite the drive that the maple has. So I wanted to use maple, but the problem with maple is that when you have a body this size, a solid body instrument can get pretty heavy, and there's a balance in there in terms of weight. A super light electric guitar is not really what people are looking for. It doesn't have this. The weight has to do with the sound. All right, so you want the right weight, and it would have been too heavy. So that's why these holes are drilled in it. It's kind of like a honeycomb construction, but in production, we put a top layer on this, so you don't see these holes. I mean, it may be fun for us to, see the holes now, and it's kind of cool, but it's not really production ready at that point. It needs to have a cover on it. So your bass has these holes in it too. You're not aware of it, but that's in order to provide that maple body that gives you that really clear, resonant, sustained kind of sound.
That's the thing about the basses. It's so clear. I mean, this is something now I'm learning about, really understanding what's all of that, because these basses are so clear, and and just the tone is just unbelievable. So that has to do with the wood and then the way everything is.
Yeah, well, it's certainly, the maple is great for resonance, for sustain, for clarity, for consistency from note to note. So this is the reason I use the maple, but it gets kind of heavy, and so this was the solution to. And that's what, musical instruments are one big compromise. Everything, you want to use the maple, but then it gets too heavy, so then you figure out how to reduce the weight of the maple by, different means. Maybe other people have different ways of doing it, but you want to come up with that mix that really is optimal. So that's what this construction is all about. Years ago, I got the idea of creating a musical instrument that was essentially a different kind of keyboard. Instead of having the keyboard linear, going in from low to high, I pictured a keyboard which was somewhat more like the frets on a musical on a guitar, where you would have the ability to play. The notes would go sideways and they go up and down, so you could play all kinds of combinations that you could not play on a conventional keyboard. But one of the things I learned in the process, and I built an instrument at one time, a sustaining guitar, where you could have infinite sustain. You pluck a note and it sustains forever. But what I came to understand a little bit better is that just playing a clean, constant note is not what music is really built on for the most part. It's built on all kind of nuance. When you play the string on a guitar, you can play harmonics if you put your pick a certain way. You can get all kinds of different responses depending on how you're feeling, how you're playing. So those idiosyncrasies of a string instrument are what makes it so special. Why the whole, people invented keyboards that could sound like a guitar. But why isn't everybody playing a keyboard? Because you can't duplicate all the nuance, all the kinds of personal interaction that a musician has with their instrument when it's capable of so much different subtle changes in tone and attack and so on. So, music is obviously about sound, but as a maker of musical instruments, I've come to think of it as it's not as much the sound as it is the way that a musician can express him or herself with the instrument. So the pure sound is one thing, but the way you can interact,
because you want to work with the instrument,
the feeling that you can create.
Exactly,
So, and that's what I think one of the reasons why electric guitars and electric basses are such a big part of music is that, on the one hand, you get connected to the electronics. You're in the modern age, and you can do so many things with an electric instrument, but still, it's a string, and you pluck it this way, it sounds that way. You pluck it this way, it sounds a little different. And all that nuance is what music is really about, because that's where the expression comes in. But, you know this much better than I do, although maybe, I think about it a little differently as more of a technician, as a technician making tools for artists. What is it that artists really need? And in some kind of strange way, maybe I even understand some things that musicians don't understand about what they need, because it's my business. Your business is to make music. My business is to make musical instruments.
Too, because the musician really need a good tool to perform. When you don't have a good tool, it's always hard. So it's really great to have somebody like you to build this, and then let me play and just make sure that I connect with the instrument, because it's already there, and I just have to really recognize the sound and go with what I'm hearing, and then make it happen. So it's two people, the builder.
Well, that's
and
the beautiful thing, absolutely. And certainly a bass player would be in pretty sad shape without a bass to play, and a bass maker would be in pretty sad shape without a musician to play it. So we are completely independent, interdependent rather, not independent. So
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a lot of fun to have you here.
Thank
and
you.
I want to take you upstairs because we got a lot. I've got a lot of different instruments from that I've made over the years, and so.
And I mean, see, look at this. This is the beginning, and then when it's finished, this is what it looks like.
Yeah, well,
right?
This is actually, this isn't quite the beginning, but it's pretty close.
Wow.
Again, it generally these days starts with, well, actually, the first violins I made were just a stick. There was no body whatsoever.
Wow.
And that's when I was, working, when I still had the Steinberger Sound Company, that was my original business, built violins that were in the kind of tradition of those early instruments. But this is the evolution of that into something that is really much more advanced over my original work.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's always I'm always trying to take it to the next level, figure out a way to create something that is got a great tone. Obviously, that's the starting point. It's also got to have a great feel.
Yeah.
It's got to feel good because
the
way you play it. Again, it's getting back to the whole thing. It's not just sound. It's the way that a musician is able to manipulate the sound, to interact with the sound, to get connected to it. So it feels good. It feels right. That's huge. And of course, the other thing that musicians often don't think about that much because it's just a natural thing, but it's got to look the part too. It's got to be something you have an aesthetic appreciation for because it's going to affect the way you feel about an instrument is going to affect the music that you make with it. So even if it had the greatest tone in the world, the greatest feel in the world, if it wasn't somehow something that you can relate to physically, looking at it and feel good about it, then it's not going to sound the same as it would if you really felt good about it. Because it's all about feeling. Music is all about feeling. So the feeling that the instrument creates for an artist is as important as anything else. So it's all interconnected.
You are very important. Sir.
The other thing is that my philosophy of making instruments is that ideally the instrument disappears. Mm-hmm. In other words, it disappears for the musician especially, maybe not for the audience, but if the instrument is really working well, it becomes part of the musician, part of the process, and it doesn't have a separate identity. And that's one of the reasons I've made them minimal and kind of not that flashy, because it's not about the instrument.
No. It's
about the music. It's about the musician. So tools should not take front stage. They are supporting. It's a little like a bass playing is generally supportive too. I mean, it has different dimensions, but so there's kind of parallel there. Just trying to make something that is so comfortable, so natural, and that your consciousness of it goes away and you just play it, and that's it. Anyway, let's head upstairs and we'll take a look at some other things and be careful. These are not the most. I don't know if OSHA would approve of these stairs.
So this is where the magic happens, eh?
Well, this is where I test them out, basically. This is where we get to check out some different instruments.
Oh my God!
No, well, this is
what?
This is.
Oh my goodness!
Lots of experiments here. Not all of them successful by any means, but I learned something from every single instrument in here. I've learned important lessons, and a lot of these instruments I build just for that purpose, as experiments to try to learn about some of the ideas that I'm interested in and whether they work or not. But the only way you really do it is to build something and try it out. So you see a lot of upright basses here, but
Man,
also
okay.
you see the box bass here, which is a lot
Yeah,
of
that's
fun.
like the old school where they used to put the food in on top of the plywood, and with one string they move the string.
Oh, you're talking about
The old bass.
a washtub bass.
Yeah, the washtub with the it had like the T.
I pulled
Plywood.
something out of the closet that I thought you might be interested in, especially because when I saw you earlier today, and you have that
The kalimba.
kalimba, the electric one, right?
Yes.
So it reminded me of an instrument that might be fun to show you. Okay, so it's an electric washtub bass.
I would love to see
Okay,
it.
so and I made this about 15, 20 years ago, just for fun. Again, a lot of this stuff is for fun. Some of it's pretty serious, but some of it isn't. So let's see if we can get this thing working here. So moving on, it just clipped right in there. That's it right there. So then you can just stick this. Now you can put your foot on here. I think you see what I mean, and you can and now plug it in, and we'll see what happens.
Whoa. This is the original bass.
I mean, it's as simple as you can get. That's for sure. Let's see if we can get some sound out of here.
There's a song on Paul's album on this new record. It's called "Stranger to Stranger."
Yeah.
There's a song. It has that wolf sound. It makes that kind of sound. Wow, this is
It's
amazing.
basically, you're washed up. I mean, this thing is so simple. It's just a piezo pickup.
Wow.
And a stick and a string, and I actually, at one point, I made fancier washed up basses. I made all kinds of crazy stuff over the
You
years.
gotta make one for me like that. Wow. And it sounds like you can hit like almost like a berimbau. Yeah, like the digital, yeah.
Yeah, right, like a didgeridoo, yeah. And you can also do that too. You can also finger, yeah. It's got too much treble
Oh my
right now.
goodness.
Turn the treble on. Let's try that.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So,
I want to try to see if we can introduce this to Paul. He would laugh because he's all about the sounds.
oh,
Like on that song,
this one is available. It's been sitting on my shelf for
I will
20
play.
years.
I will play that.
Yeah, all
Definitely. Wow.
All right. And one thing you can see, you can stick this, you get different. If you put it closer, it's more.
You
and
get
then
like
if
higher
put it
pitch.
further away, then it's more. So
Wow.
it changes, a lot. And I also have a nylon string for it too, which
Wow.
gives it a very different kind of sound.
So what kind of strings are these?
This is just a bass string. It's like a, I don't know, an A string or something like that.
Wow.
But I mean, it's it's a piece of wood that's worth absolutely nothing. A couple pieces of wood that are worth absolutely nothing. A piezo pickup that's worth a piezo sensor that's worth a few dollars,
Man.
and that's it. There's nothing to it. So If you can figure out something to do with it, that would be a real blast.
Oh no, make music with this. Between that and the kalimba, I can make some beautiful music.
Fantastic.
This,
Okay,
this is beautiful.
We'll make sure you get to take it home with you.
Now I see the other stuff. Now, Ned, tell me about this big box.
Sorry. Got a problem here. We got a hot little crystal there, and it doesn't like the just get a. Yeah.
Also, you just put the strings.
It's just the string just fits in this little hole here. It's
Wow.
And that's the piezo here, right there. That's the pickup. And,
That's what makes that beautiful sound.
Piezos, the truth of the matter is that electric bass players tend to have very negative attitudes about piezo. Not all bass players, but a lot of bass players. But I don't think people fully appreciate the potential of this type of pickup because it is much wider frequency response than electromagnetic pickup. And magnetic pickups are terrific. I mean that they're so much wonderful music has been made with them over the years. I'm the last person to be trying to criticize them or anything. But on the other hand, this pickup has the potential to create a whole nother palette of sound that. But it's a little bit different because a magnetic pickup has a very pronounced mid-range, which parallels acoustic instruments and is easier to, you could just kind of plug it in and get your sound. But you notice I was turning down the treble there because this thing has so much treble compared to a magnetic pickup, but it also has so much bass. This thing will track flat down to 1-2 cycles. I mean, it's really quite an unbelievable technology, but we haven't really completely figured out how to harness it, for the pleasure of musicians. Because again, you have to work with it in order to get it to do what you want it to do. But it will do just about anything if you can figure out how to direct it. So I still remain very big on this piezo system, and of course, for bowed instruments, the piezo is what has created the new world of electric bowed instruments.
Wow.
When I started making double basses, bass players told me not even to bother trying to get a good arco sound. You can make electric bass sound good in pitch, but you're never going to get it to sound well in arco. And but it's not true. And if you learn how to harness the power of these piezos, you get fabulous arco sound, as has been shown by players who be using our
right now this thing sounds amazing.
Well, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So, what do you?
So tell me about these big boxes. The drum.
All right. So
drum bass.
Oh,
what do you call that?
Wow. Well, I call that a drum bass. I call that a box bass.
A box bass.
Whatever. It's a box and a drum. But the way I got started on these, again, they're like the washtub, the electric washtub. They're not that serious. Okay, they're more, but they are experiments that I learned from at the same time. So I'm not expecting the world to start playing box basses or drum basses, but I learned from making them. I learned from interacting with musicians who check them out. And the idea, first of all, this is what I started with here was the drum bass. And what I discovered when I started making upright basses is that the input from the bow and the input from a plucked string, bowed string or plucked string, they operate very differently. And if you want to optimize the pickup for a bowed string, you have to be sensitive to side-to-side vibrations. Because the bow drives the string side to side. And again, I was talking earlier about how the piezo was the kind of the building block of a modern bowed electric instrument because a magnetic pickup picks up and down vibrations, but that's not what you need for a bowed instrument. And those up and down vibrations, if you think about let's say a flat top guitar, which has a flat top, that's all it does. It does up and down. Yeah. You know, because that's what the membrane is vibrating. That works really well for a plucked instrument because it tends to suppress the attack a little bit, and then as the string starts to move, so you get kind of a more sustained kind of a sound. But on a double bass, as I'm sure, you know, I don't know how much you might have thought about it in these terms, but the characteristic sound of a double bass when you pluck it is the big attack, right?
Yeah, right away.
It has a big upfront attack, and it decays fairly quickly from there. So I began to learn about all this through experimenting with the electronics, and of course the system developed for the upright basses. I have a switch, so you can go from a pickup that's sensitive side to side, which is optimum for the bow, and which gives you a pitch sound which is very percussive. But then you can flip the switch and you can control the attack, reduce the attack, and have a little bit more of a sustained, even kind of sound. So I thought to myself, and this is what, again, the learning process, not just about how the instrument works, but about what a musician is looking for. You know, for me, I was thinking, well, just the upright bass isn't really making that much sense, you know, to play at pits. It was designed to be bowed, after all. You know, upright bass is traditional. Upright bass is designed to be bowed. That's what they were made for originally. But now all these musicians are using them plucked, and they're really enjoying that, and there's something really good going on there. What is that? So I began to understand the importance of that percussive sound and how that was part of the music that you guys are making with those instruments. But I thought to myself too, you know, maybe there's a way to make an acoustic instrument, acoustic bass, that has less percussion and more sustain, but also more volume. And this is also, this pickup system on this instrument is something that I call a stress-free system, in that if you notice these strings, if you look at them from the side, you'll see that they don't pull down on the bridge, they don't pull up on the bridge, they don't put any stress on the bridge at all. They're held into the bridge by these angled slots, so they're kept in position. So you can have a very loose top, and this isn't pushing down on it or restricting it in any way. And so I thought, what's the loudest acoustic bass I could make? And this thing is pretty loud. Check it out. I mean, I'm not saying it's all that useful, but it's it reverberates around all over the place. It's kind of crazy, but it's fun.
Oh man, this is really fun. Oh, so when you play down there, you get much. Wow. And the sound, I mean, like, of course you get the drum sound as well.
It was real simple. I mean, basic stuff.
Wow.
You know, just taking advantage of the resonance of a drum, and you know, you can adjust the response. Of course, you know, you can change the tuning of the head and all that. So,
like when I play this note, I can hear the drum skin. It's got that echo.
It's very echoey, very, and that's, you know, it's not all that useful for most music, but it's fun, and it's an experiment. So This bass here was, I was thinking, you know, why do you have to have a $10,000 bass, 100,000, you know, acoustic basses get very, you know, they're beautifully sculpted and so on. Like, what about just making something really basic, really cheap? And what could you, you know, build a box? And, you know, a speaker is a box. You get a lot of sound out of a speaker. So I just thought I'd try that.
Wow.
You know, this.
It looks cool.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a little.
Oh, and the sound. Whoa. Oh my goodness. No. Wow, the sound is amazing. Wow. Wow. Wow, my goodness, this is beautiful. This is really awesome.
Well,
Wow.
it's.
I mean, the sound is just so organic. Wow.
Well, it's a learning experience for me, and I learned that. I mean, really, what I set out to do, I didn't accomplish. I was looking to keep even more volume
Yeah.
than I was able to achieve. But I learned,
sounds
you know, this has a
interesting.
stress-free bridge on it too. So I was experimenting with that concept and seeing how I could apply it, and I learned that it's pretty interesting, but doesn't really, never really quite, you know, went where I wanted to go with it. But
I'm gonna send you this bass. I bought it. A friend of mine bought it in Morocco. It's a gimbri. It's like you know, an old bass. It's got the stick like the one I just played,
Yes.
but it's called a gimbri, and it used the guard strings. It's like the nylon or plastic strings.
yes,
But you have to pull the string. The string is tied like this, and then the strings is like that, and then you have this string, so you can pull it to get a different note
I see.
to tune it. But it's got the bridge. The bridge is almost like this kind of bridge, but it collapses all the time. But I'm gonna send it to you and see what you can do with it.
Okay.
It's called the
sure.
gimbri. It's only three
So
strings.
what keeps the string from sliding back again? You have to keep holding it up.
Yeah, you have to keep holding them up, and then once you get a note, you tie it.
I
It's
see.
like a handmade bass that was, you know, built in Morocco. It's got the three strings, and then they're all like different, you know, like maybe the higher string is low, and then you got the middle string, and then, you know, the other string, the lower string. But it's very interesting. I'm gonna send you a video of it and when I get home.
Okay.
And then maybe even send
Yeah,
you the
I'll
gimbal, what you
check it
can
out.
do, because it's really amazing.
I wonder what you think about the sound of this bass.
Of this one? Sounds good.
Sounds great.
Love it. Wow, and this is still in the process.
Well, no, this actually, this has been sitting around here for a long time. I thought you might enjoy it. This was my original concept for an electric upright. This is what I thought I want. This, and I make mock-ups of the instruments. I don't try to make an instrument right away because I want to experiment with the shapes
Yes,
and the form and everything. So this is just made out of the simplest materials. But what I did here was I made a classic error, and that is that I didn't, you know, I got into headless bass guitars, right?
Mhm.
You know, from back in the late 1970s is when I first started making them. And so I got really excited about headless bass guitars for the balance. The main thing about a headless bass guitar is the balance. It makes it, it's just all those balance issues with the neck dive and everything, you know, as you know, they're gone, right, when you go to headless. So I went to make an upright, but I made the same mistake that I kind of, I saw in other people. For example, when they went to make electric guitar, people make electric guitars, but they started out with hollow bodies, and you know, they made electric guitar like an acoustic guitar. Didn't really make sense, and so I always was thinking, you know, what makes sense? How can you make something that really has kind of integrity? You know, like an acoustic guitar, traditional acoustic guitar has huge integrity. There's reasons for everything. It developed over hundreds of years.
Yeah.
But what I did in this case was I got so in the habit of making headless instruments, when I went to make an electric upright, I figured it had to be headless, but it didn't really make any sense. It's actually more convenient to tune up here than it is to tune down here, and there are no balance issues like with an electric bass guitar.
Yeah.
So it took me a little while to, but I finally said, you know what? No, this doesn't actually make sense. It should have a headstock.
Yeah.
So this was a stepping stone, you know, to making something that really made sense. So this, for me, is kind of a lesson, you know, what not to do. You know, don't just do what you did before.
Yeah.
Whatever you're going to do, make it appropriate for the new thing that you're doing. You don't just do the same old thing. So that's...
because, I mean, of course, the upright makes sense to tune it up there. Then,
well, you just don't have the balance issues. So that's what led... This instrument here, then this is one of the first of real electric uprights. This is, I mean, Tony Levin made a lot of beautiful music with this bass, but he ran into some technical problems with it, so I end up with it right now. But this was one of the very first serious electric uprights that I built. And you can see it has a lot in common with what we're doing now, but still, this was the initial effort. Here, we can plug this thing in too if you want to see what it sounds like.
oh, the neck is very interesting in the back here.
Yeah, and look at the back. You see, it's got all these. This was again. These ideas were eventually discarded, but this has. You can see on the back here, it has position markers for every fret, and they have little. You know, this one doesn't have one, but this has a marker here. So the idea is that you could feel where you are in the neck. But you know, it wasn't really necessarily what was needed. But there we go. Let's see if we can get this going here. This is layers of maple and carbon fiber.
Wow.
Okay. So, and it's all made in a mold. So it's a completely different kind of construction. Then this fingerboard is actually wrapped around the face of it. You know, the fingerboard is just really thin. So this was how I got started on the upright basses. And it evolved from there. But the construction here is completely unique.
Wow.
And the idea too was, I was making 5 and 6 string instruments. So when you have a big arch on the front of the fingerboard, and then you have the curve on the back, when the wider the neck gets, the thicker the neck gets. So the idea of this was to cut right through that and to give kind of an electric kind of a feel to it. You know, the thickness of it, like an electric bass guitar or whatever, but still with the full width of the neck. So the construction and the shape and everything were evolved for that purpose. And we still make this kind of bass, although most of them have a conventional neck. I mean, you know, a lot of the work I've done over the years is, you know, I kind of push the boundaries, and then I get to push back from musicians and, oh, well, we like this, but really rather have a conventional neck. Okay, we can do that. You know, I mean, it's about making instruments that work for musicians. But, you know, in my work, a lot of people would ask musicians what they want and then try to just do what the musician says. But that's, I mean, I'm very much interested in giving musicians what they want, but on the other hand, I understand, I mean, you understand your music, I understand my instruments, so I have some ideas about things that I could do for you that you might not have ever imagined. So if I ask you what you want, you're going to probably want things that are pretty much what you've become accustomed to and love. But I'm interested in pushing the boundaries, so I can't just go with that, or I'd be, making Fender jazz basses, but I don't. That's not what I'm interested in doing. I'm interested in pushing the boundaries. So I try to learn, try to read between the lines. Try to think about what could I do that actually would be better than what you or some other musician who's advising me on what I might do. I have to get somehow beyond that to really make it happen. So it's.
I remember we talked about that when when I was first introduced to the basses, the Raiders, and I said about, because in my thinking I was like, hey, look, you're so used to that. So if the next bass you're gonna play, you expect that. So when I talked to you and you explained this to me, and that became very clear that sometimes just you play the instrument and then the instrument will lead you to what's correct. So for me to spend time with the instruments and play and understand the electronics, and even though I was getting confused a lot, how I tuned the bass, and I'm like, oh no, by the way, but that really helps me to understand. And then also the way the tuning pads they on the back, that makes sense for me, because then I get a lot of sustains. Now I'm starting to hear things that this bass is giving that I really, really like and understand it. So that makes sense, because sometimes I can say, I like the bass to sound like that, and you say, I'll make that bass, but it's not what I do, And this is, and it's just brilliant.
Well, sometimes, I mean, on occasion, I'll get an email or a call from a musician, and they'll say, your instrument inspired me to make the music I'm making. And I know that it's only a limited amount that the instrument can really do. I mean, the musician has to really come up with the instruments. But still, the idea that to me is the most fantastic thing, to think that maybe I've actually, through these instruments, inspired someone to make art. I mean, that's the greatest.
Because when you paint a picture, you have to have the right tools. You have to have the right brushes to make that picture, to tell the story. And that's exactly what I see with this instrument. But I'll tell you something about that instrument. Then I love that fretless. And playing that fretless, the one I played on the Graceland for many years, it took me years to come up with something, because that instrument now, it's old, and it's I'm starting to have some problems with noise, and it's something that they cannot be replaced. So, but I was looking for a fretless that can be close to that, even more power. This fretless, it's unbelievable. It's got that. It makes, like my playing, same way, like I can play the Graceland songs and have that same tone that I've had with my old bass with this Raiders fretless. It's just.
Well,
that's why I'm here, because
that's music to my ears.
I love this stuff, and I tell you, Ned, this is one of the best fretless that I've ever played. I've tried some fretless, nothing come close to this fretless.
Well, thank you.
I will play it now, just make sure that
play it a little bit for us. Yeah.